and welcome to our biggest little theater festival youth portion, where we are doing our best to try to present and also talk about theater for youth in our community, which is Reno, Nevada. And I have three incredible artists with me today that are also presenters as part of our festival, but are mainstays in our community and very good friends of Bruca and other theater companies here who are just digging in and creating theater so that we can also create a new generation. So thank you all for coming today and showing up continually. And today we're going to first of all introduce ourselves so that people know who we are and also what we presented in the festival. So let's start with Miss Stacy Spain.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stacy Spain. I am a seasoned theater professional. And you know how folks have different sort of definitions of themselves over the years, writer, actor, director. Today, I am embracing playwriting more and directing more and then acting. So playwright, director, actor, sort of in that order, but everything is fluid. I'm presenting a reading of Queen of Sunshine Mountain, which is a play which is in process. I put it away for a couple of years and now I'm bringing it back out and making sure that it is ready to be published. So we wanted to have this reading and go through the show. And yes, it needs some rewrites before it goes to print. So I'm excited about that. But Lucky Bat Books is going to be publishing it, which is exciting for me. And I teach at TMCC. I teach theater. And I am a director. I've directed at Bruca Theater, been lucky enough to do that. And of course, other theater companies in town, as well as UNR and TMCC. And so the world of playwriting is fascinating to me because you create the world. And in theater, then, if you're a director, they interpret that world for you, of course, and actors inhabit the world. So playwriting for me is something that I want to pour my energy into more these days.
Nice, nice. Well, thank you, Stacy. We love your work. And Jesse James Ziegler.
Hi. As Mary said, I am Jesse James Ziegler. I am the current poet in residence at the Bruca Theater of the Sierra. I am an active member, both poet and board member, special events series host, and weekly wellness writing workshop host in collaboration with Spoken Views Collective. I'm the spoken word contributor to Reno Arts News and a member of the Sierra Literary Cooperative. And all of that is just a fancy mouthful of words to say that I love storytelling and all forms of storytelling, which is why I want to try to be more of a bridge between theater and performance poetry, because to me that line is very blurred. Why I'm drawn more to poetry as a first love is that it is my own words and I'm being myself, which allows for me to meet other people of vastly different perspectives for the sake of community building. So it's about storytelling and building community is why I'm doing this and why I love poetry and theater so much.
Thank you, Jesse. We appreciate you so much. And then if you tune in each Sunday, or you can even check out some past episodes, Jesse leads a beautiful poetry yet inspirational session called Conscious Breath that we've called a couple of different things. I think I made an accident and renamed it, but we never know what we do. So we go with the flow, just like Jesse says. But it's great. And you've been so consistent and inspiring for people. So thank you very much. And we love having a poet in residence at Bruca. I mean, how cool is that? Yeah, right? And Keely Cobb.
Hi, Keely Cobb. I'm the artistic director, founder, and choreographer for a dance company in Reno called Around the Stage. I'm also the director of theater at Sage Ridge School in South Reno. And I self-produce my own work with the company. And the work that I like to create is a combination of theater and dance, storytelling, character development with modern dance techniques. So all of our shows that we like to put on have some kind of storyline to them or some kind of character development within. And that's me.
Fabulous. I have had the absolute joy experience of working with all three of you in teaching youth and or teaching teachers to integrate art into their curriculum. And some of the work that I feel like that we've been able to do and coalesce on has just been really exciting and really helps move me forward. I'm producing artistic director at Bruca Theater, and I also work as an arts integration specialist. And this year taught middle school drama at Durrell Academy, which has been so insightful and inspiring and wonderful. And lots of other things. You know, I like to do some weird stuff. So like right? I like to create. So this is great. So we're going to start off. I have 5 questions that I thought we could speak to today. And the first one is really about you and your core. So I'm going to go back through that pattern, Stacy, Jesse, Keely, and then we're going to go for some nostalgia. So I'd like to know your first memory of theater as a child, as youth. What'd you see? How did it affect you? Stace. See, I always freeze Stacy because she's like, what? Mary? Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're gonna see if Stacy can get back in. It's a pretty picture, so we can.
So
Okay,
my first, oh no.
Yeah,
So, okay, I'm good. The first piece of theater I ever saw, my parents were taking an introduction to theater class. And so, of course, they took us to see, my brother and I, a production of When You Coming Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, which is not a piece of children's theater at all. But it completely captivated me. We were sitting way up in the back row, so that, of course, the children wouldn't bother the audience members down below. But I was rapt by these characters on the stage, by the kind of explosive violence that happened in the play, but also by the magic of theater. And so I always think to myself, that is not a traditional way to begin experiencing theater, but for me, it was incredibly formative. And I can remember the smell of the theater, the darkness surrounding the little white box down at the proscenium edge of the stage, and the actors creating on stage now. And I must have been maybe 6. So that was incredibly informative for me. So I'm really happy that, they broke the rules and took a kid to see a play that a kid wasn't supposed to see.
I love that. Jesse, what was your first play that you saw as a youth?
Well, it's interesting because the first one I remember, I'm sure that my grandparents at some point took me to something near Old Town Sacramento that was during the day, like a Sunday matinee of something when I was a tiny kid. That I'm sure that they would have done that. But my first experience that I distinctly remember was actually doing theater, because I went to a tiny school in the middle of, miles outside of Grass Valley, California. Clear Creek Elementary, where one of the teachers at the time had a friend, Karen Wolfson, that was a drama instructor at the time. So in 6th grade, I got to be man number 7 in Oklahoma. And that was just no disrespect to Keely. I appreciate dance as an art form. I have never been a dancer or a singer. And my drama teacher, bless her, at the time said, I love your voice. You have a great speaking voice. I want to try to give you the biggest part I can possibly give you that doesn't have to sing or dance. And so that was my first experience, and I got the bug and fell in love with theater in 6th grade.
Fabulous. Oh my gosh. Keely.
My parents took me to see theater when I was very young. I think one of the first things that I saw was Cats the musical. And I think I was 3 years old and I kept meowing the entire show. I wanted to be one of the cats on stage. So the whole time I was going meow, 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 annoying everyone around me. Um, but a show that I actually remember was going to see Annie with my sister. And they wanted I think I went with my aunt, and they wanted us to feel like we were having our own experience. So, like on by ourselves, like an adult. And so they gave us seats away from them, and me and my sister got all dressed up and had our purses, and we got like a special drink, and we got to sit with each other and watch the show, and we were just mesmerized by this huge stage and these actors and the costumes and the magic of everything. And then after that, my parents took me to go audition for my first show. So that was kind of the beginning of my theatrical career.
So good. Look at those family connections, right? Thank goodness
Mhm.
our families are paying attention to that and taking kids to the theater. I hope that continues. All of those shows brought back such memories when you talked about them. I love it. I did Five and Dime, loved doing that show, but I wasn't six. Now looking back, I feel like I was. Oklahoma. I too sang out the largest beltway in the world, but in the audience in front of the mic, this was their phase. But I sang out, Louise. And then Keely, Annie, oh my gosh, and just getting dressed up for the theater, I get it. I think now one of my first shows that I remember seeing as well, other than Yellow Submarine at the drive-in movies, which is a totally different genre, is Antigone. And I'm so fascinated with that play. Actually, I worked on that play with kids this year at Durrell, and it's a really cool play to dig into with teens. But I must have been about 6 years old, and our neighbor Barbara Burkholder was the queen, and that's why we went. She was University of Platteville was presenting it, and just in that name, you can tell what a large university that was, University of Platteville. But it was beautiful, and I remember then, and not until I reread Antigone as an adult, thinking that the queen was the star of Antigone because that was our neighbor who played the queen, and she sat in this large chair, and we would reenact her moment in our backyard continuously of sitting in the large chair as the queen, which doesn't have a lot to do with Antigone, and yet the impact was huge. So thank you, Barbara Burkholder at University of Platteville, and all of the parents and aunts and uncles and caretakers and friends who take children to the theater, right? Because I think it sparked something in all four of us weirdos. So now I want to see if you can remember the first time you saw a presentation of theater for youth, specifically theater for youth. Miss Spain.
So this is maybe perhaps even an earlier memory. I had an auntie who had cerebral palsy, and we went, and she was pretty. She had some disabilities that were tough to made it tough to understand her speaking, but I adored her, loved her. We played Go Fish all the time. And when I was about 5, we went to a local library with her, and they had a clown troupe that was there that was doing some performance, which was specifically for children. And it had narrative, so it wasn't just seeing a clown, which we can argue whether that's theater or not. But there was a story, so I'm thinking that it was theater. And at the end, and it was very interactive, so that is, in the lines of what children's theater sometimes becomes. And at the end, they asked for a volunteer to get clown makeup applied on their face. and that was me.
Mm.
I raised my hand, and my auntie was so excited, and so I became a clown at 5.
Harder like that.
I wish I had a photograph of that.
Me too.
I went to clown college later, so it's all a circle. And so the thing I think about children's theater is the interactive portion of it can be wonderful, can create great memories for kids. And having worked at Idaho Theater for Youth, it's a big challenge for performers as well. So that's my first memory.
I love that. I love that story, as Pee Wee Herman would say. Jen.
Well, I don't remember what grade I was in, and I don't remember the setting as far as where we were. I believe it was the old Veterans Building, but I could be wrong. But there was a traveling storyteller that was essentially both a puppeteer and an actor, and he did this show where he was all of the characters, like did the puppeteering, but he was also the voiceover and did a lot of different voices. And I just thought to myself, just in wonder of the story, because it was kind of like watching an animated movie come to life in front of me. I don't know how to describe it other than that, but I just felt this sense of wonder at thinking about all the different characters based on the voices and I loved that theater to me represented, because it was all for kids, but it represented, there were no boundaries on the imagination, that you couldn't cage the imagination. You couldn't put the imagination in a box. You just kind of had to try to ride that wave, so to speak. And that sense of wonder has stuck with me ever since, especially with regards to fantastic themes.
Oh, I love it. And I also look in these squares and know that each one of us has been a one woman band at any certain point. And that's a great thing to teach kids, right? Listen, you got the ideas. You can do it on your own. You got it. Keely. Uh-oh, I can't hear you. There you go. Keely, start again for us.
Oh, okay. I don't remember what grade I was in, but I do remember we were in the cafeteria. It was like an assembly. Everyone was there, and there was this puppetry group that was presenting. And I remember just the whole time being like, how are they moving the puppets like that? Where are the people? Are there people? Are they animatronics? What is going on here? I was just I had so many questions. I wanted to know everything about this puppet show. And they had volunteers come up. And I remember they brought out the puppet and they had someone come try the puppet. And I remember, oh man, I was so jealous. I was like, why can't I be that kid? I want to know how to work the puppet. And I remember afterwards at the end of the show, I didn't know this kid, but I walked right up to them and said, hey, how does the puppet work? Tell me everything. What was it like? And then going to, I think it was math class afterwards. And I didn't think about math. I had to know how these puppets worked and how this whole show worked, and how I wanted to just, that was the only thing I could think about for weeks, I think. So it's just cool how seeing theater kind of sticks with you. And for me specifically, I could not understand how we could just go on to math class and not talk about the puppet show we just saw. Because it just was so cool to me.
Right. And then Keely and I, a lot of arts integration there, right? So now knowing that, wouldn't it have been cool if the math teacher then could have brought that into that classroom,
right?
And said, okay, so here's
the denominator or the numerator.
Right?
Oh.
Yeah, which is so fun because you were sparked. Carry it forward.
Yeah.
I love these. My first memory, it's funny listening to stories too, right? Because then it'll trigger other memories and things like that. And it's a lovely walk down memory lane. We had Platteville, Wisconsin again, cafeteria. we had a troupe come in, a man and a small woman. I remember she was so limber and could do anything. And I think they did Midsummer, a real short version of Midsummer Night's Dream, and was totally understandable. So they took it and they did some great things. I think Jesse's doing a puppet show with the interview. uh, and it was the first time I realized, and I remember I was so excited. Girls could play boys and boys could play girls. Oh my gosh. And so it completely changed our backyard troop that we had ago, right? Our little neighborhood kids. Because then I remember going back and breaking the news to them. We no longer all had to play princesses, though it was fun and I loved it. We could play all of the roles, and it really changed the landscape for us quite a bit as when we, in our playtime, and also when we were creating these silly backyard types of plays. But we do theater for children now and tour to schools, and oftentimes I'll be in a cafeteria and smell that smell and think, I might not be here today 30, 60 years later without having those people come into the school and showing what they're showing. I like the way that Stacy's face is frozen now. Keep it. Hopefully she'll come back. Good. Oh, we'll see. Let's see. Oh, it's so interesting doing Zoom. It's almost like a murder mystery to see if our will come back in. I just want to keep a roll in this way, because she might come back in. But I'm going to ask the next question, and then we'll catch Stacy up. Why do we present theater for youth? And I think we just talked about that a little bit. But what's the intention? What's the reason we're presenting theater for youth and for children? Jesse?
Well, there's so many. I mean, there's so many layers to that great question. We present why the reasons why I believe we present theater for youth. One is to just get kids exposed to reading more and watching more content that is thought-provoking, emotionally evocative, and then has the maturity to deal with the consequences of evoking those responses and provoking that thought, which is to be one of the only ways in which I think you can teach empathy is through storytelling and theater specifically. That, like, the only way you can really teach it is to show it or to demonstrate it or to role model it. And so to teach kids empathy, to expose them to increased literacy, to make them feel not so alone. I remember seeing a play when I was a kid where there was a kid getting bullied, and I don't remember what the play was called, but I remember being teased in third grade, and I remember being having lunches thrown in the garbage can and seeing friends of mine stuffed in trash cans. And then you get to see these theatrical productions as a kid yourself, and you realize you can pass that spark on to the next generation. You can pass that love of storytelling on to the next generation. So for both poetry, my forte, and theater, another love of mine, you need to get that voice of what the future looks like, because the truth might look strange, but the youth represent the truth. Mm-hmm. What the youth are thinking about and focused on and energized by, that is our collective future, whether we like it or not. So we can either address that and deal with that in a mature fashion as theater tries to, or we can ignore it and then it comes out in other ways, like bullets and other imbalances in the world.
Yeah, there's a lot there, Jesse. Thank you. Keely, and welcome back, Stace. We're talking about why are we presenting theater for youth? What's the importance behind that? So we'll go Keely, and then Stacy, you'll follow that one up.
For me, I know that it taught me a lot of courage to be able to stand up in front of people and put on a character, or just to talk in front of people. It takes a lot of bravery. And so I think it's really important for kids to learn that it is okay to stand up and say how you're feeling and express yourself in this safe environment as well. Um, like going back to the puppet show, I was a very, very, very shy kid. I didn't have a lot of friends because it's very hard for me to talk to people. And when that kid got to work with the puppet, it took a lot of courage for me to go up and say, "Hey, what was that like? How did that work?" But it was because I was so interested in this artwork, then this artistry of using a puppet, that I found something within me to go up to this kid I had never met before and ask them all of these questions about this. So for me, it's so important for kids to have that ability to learn bravery and courage and stand up on stage and put on a show.
I love it. Confidence, courage, all those
Mm,
wonderful things that are so important,
yeah.
right? We can talk all day about the education of children in terms of math, reading, and all of those things are very important, but so is confidence and courage to be able to get yourself through it and develop, right? So great.
Yeah.
Miss Spain, Stacy Spain.
I want to go back to my experience working with Idaho Theater for Youth. In those 2 years, it was my 2 years between undergraduate and graduate school, and I worked with this company, and we did all self-written work. So we had 2 weeks to develop a show, and then we had 2 weeks to rehearse a show, and then we had 8 weeks on the road with the show, and then we would do it again. We had a group of 4 people, and we cycled through who was the director, who was the on-road manager, and who were lead actors, and then supporting actors. So it was a churn, right? So I did 300 performances of a show called Info, Informational Nucleic Female Officer, where we had an inflatable set, and it took place on Mars, and it was a wonderful show that was about exploration. So these ideas of what's the seed, what do you want these students to be thinking, feeling, remembering as they leave the show? How are we going to create a world that's going to spark that with them? How can we involve this audience, because theater for children and theater with children are different things? And how do you keep a group of 300 students in a cafeteria really excited and paying attention for 40 minutes? And how do you do that 4 times a day? But students are so honest, and if they are into what you are doing, they can they give such honest responses, and they become so involved in the world that you have created with plasticine and a couple of fans to make an inflatable set. So I think storytelling is the big one. It's like we want to create these worlds for these kids and have them inhabit them with us. So it was an exciting, wonderful time for me.
Right? It's exhausting and inspiring and all of those things.
All of it.
So years ago, I did an intern or an apprenticeship at a place called B Street Theater, and then worked with their theater for children called Fantasy Theater. And so they toured Northern California, and B Street really did great work. It was really good for me as a young theater artist. And this can kind of lean into our next question too, to realize that I could have a profession in theater when a lot of people I knew didn't believe that that was possible, but finding people that believed it was possible and did it, huge, right? But so we did some heavy tours with them. We toured quite a bit. We would do 4 shows a day, load into a school, do 2 shows in the morning, load in the afternoon, do 2 more shows on the road. And then we would do shows at night at the theater. So it was exhausting, but so worth it and wonderful. And from that experience, I've taken a lot of what I learned at B Street and turned it into what we do with our Theater for Youth in terms of the efficiency of the sets, of how we switch the sets and the load in. You know, I think if you do something long enough, it really stays with you if it works, right? And you can carry it forward. So I'm very thankful to have worked with them. And they did something so great at the end of each season. They did a fantasy festival where they then did a playwriting contest where they took 3 plays from different school kids, and then we rehearsed them and performed them back at those schools. So then we did the tour again. But the children who wrote those plays got to come in and rehearse with us and with professional directors, and it was really something. And they were very much respected. So it was Tim and Buck Busfield, who are brothers who run B Street. I treated these kids like they were masterminds, as well they should be. And so the stuff that they were able to come up with for us and with us was great. And then taking it into the school where then that child had come from, and that child being celebrated of like, oh my gosh, this is your play, was really, really beautiful and such a gift. And I think some of those kids, I know that they did, worked with B Street as older students. I know for us at Bruca, kids that we've gone into schools and have seen us play different schools and communities have since come and worked with our Theater for Youth and our theater workshops with children. And so I think you guys are just hitting it right on the head with they integrate the kids into them. They present an experience that we can all have. And how cool is that, right? That's so important with theater. So now I can't decide which one to go to next, but I really believe that Theater for Youth helps promote the understanding of artistry, and that you can work as an artist. You might have to support yourself in different ways, but it is possible to be an artist, embrace your artistry, and take it into your adulthood and blossom. So without having to I don't want you to have to say your resume, but I want you to talk about how you support your art and what that means to you in adulthood and carrying it forward. Stacey, you spoke a little bit about that, of dipping in now, and I'm going to focus on playwriting. It doesn't mean that's all you are.
Sure.
But right, that's huge. So let's start with you, Stacey, and then we'll go back around. We'll carry this, Stacey, Keely, Jesse. So what does that mean to you?
I don't know if I'm answering the right question, but I want to go back a little bit to Idaho Theater for Youth. It was my first professional theater gig, right? I had a BA in theater, and to be paid $400 a week to plus a per diem, plus hotels and stuff for the tours. It spoke to me about the fact that yes, I could be a working theater artist. And in Idaho, there weren't so many theater companies that were paying a living wage at all. And, that was almost 30 years ago. So that seems like a lot of money for 30 years ago for, for a kid that had just, graduated from college. But that told me that theater was a path that I could create a living for myself. And at that time I was a single mom, a young boy, that I could still do this. And then, fast forward all these years later, I teach theater at a community college. And I am lucky enough to get to work in theater in a small market. Reno is a small market. And I have been fortunate enough to, have been funded to do playwriting through different various grants, which is incredible. I would just tell folks that it's not just LA and New York. When I was growing up, if you wanted to be a theater person, that's where you thought you had to be. That we can create meaningful lives supported by our communities where we are planted, that we don't have, Yes, go, if you're a dancer and you want to dance at the, very top level, yeah, go out of town and, work with companies that you can build your skills in. Same as an actor. I lived in New York for.
Oh, see, New York edited Stacy. New York's like, did you? Okay, we're gonna come back to Stacy on that note. She might still be talking when she comes back out, which is the beauty of Zoom. Keely, let's build upon that too, because you're much younger than we are, and you are creating so many opportunities for people. So what does all of this mean to you?
Well, I learned that Reno's a very do-it-yourself kind of community. And I've kind of embraced that, I like to think. I self-produced my first show, the Showbiz Cabaret, the summer after I graduated college. I had no idea what I was going to do. Before I was interested in being an actor in a regional theater somewhere in like Chicago. But then I took like my first directing class, my second choreography class, and I loved this more creative side of theater, of the performing arts, and directing and producing and creating rather than just being a performer. So I put together this show and it did surprisingly well. And then I just kind of kept doing that and fell in love with choreographing and dance and producing. And I learned how to apply for grants and start getting grants every year to pay for my work. And then I also worked as a waitress for 4 years at Olive Garden to help pay my rent while I was producing these works. Then in 2018, I created a company, and I'm like crazy busy now all of a sudden. It's really, really cool how things kind of progress, and the more people you meet, the more opportunities you get. Eve Allen has given me a lot of work and created a lot of connections for me. And she actually got me a job choreographing for Sage Ridge. And then later, when the theater director left, I became the new director of theater. So now I'm not waitressing anymore. I'm teaching theater at a college prep school and then creating my own work as well. So I think my biggest advice is meet as many people as you can and just you get all these connections. Network. Because every job I've ever received is because of someone I met or I knew or I worked with.
Right. Stacey,
Crazy.
sorry for you again, my dear.
Yeah,
We're
sorry.
going to pretend you have different appointments.
Right, I'm just leaving to answer a very important something.
The stocks are falling. Jesse, tell us about your artistry. How are you supporting it? What do you believe?
Well, I believe that, I don't remember who said it, but it was, it's never too late to be who you might have been. And so I've never tried to make my living as a poet, but because of my love for the art form, I've met a lot of people, as Keely touched upon, network, through Spoken Views Collective and through Bruca Theater. Neither entity I knew at all in any way, shape, or form before moving to Reno, Nevada, but my openness and putting myself out there, like, who's doing what? I want to help. I want to be a part of something larger than myself, which to me is still the greatest opportunity life hands us, is to be a part of projects that are larger than ourselves. I realize as I look back on my own youth that I never had really that representation of the arts being a possibility for a career. It was always looked on as, people that I knew in my family and other people that I knew in general would always be the, what are you going to do with that type of questions, people, as seeing it, as opposed to seeing it as an end in itself. It was like, well, what is that a means to? So that openness that I have for the world around me and what sparks a lot of my own writing, I want to now take the fact that I do have a stable job with hours that give me nights and weekends off to use all of that time and that money that I have to pay the bills to focus on being that representation and that role model for the youth that are interested in poetry now, and giving them platforms so that some of those amazing poets, two of which you'll see in the interview, Jennifer Calzada and Samora Horsley, that I got to meet them when they were in high school, and now they're both about to graduate college, and I've seen them kind of grow up with this art form, and it has enriched their lives insofar as being better at public speaking, better at familial relations, better with their confidence. And I am just very thankful that I have employers that support my true love, which they all know is doing the volunteer work that I get to do. That maybe one day that will make me money. I just applied to be the city of Reno's poet laureate. I would be getting paid a stipend across 2 years if I'm honored with that role, which I hope to get. But I have made money from my photography work. I have made money from writing prose. I have made money for being a stage manager for plays. So there are ways to make money, but and then I take the money that I make from my paycheck and I do things like I'm a contributing member at the Nevada Museum of Art. I donate money every month to the Holland Project, where we have our poetry readings, so that that venue can get by on subscriber membership. And it is my absolute love to do that through Bruca as well, and get to know the kids that are really hungry to be mentored, so that maybe I can find those kids that just want to know that what they think about and what they're going through, they're not the only ones, and that there's ways to express that, and that allows for growth as they develop across their own life individually, but then that also brings about community building in that process because they find their chosen family.
Yeah. It's really exciting too with the resurgence of spoken word. I've just really seen, and I think it's with all art forms, right? It's what lights us up.
Right.
But
Right.
how you can speak your truth through that. And I think it's wonderful. And one of the things that is so cool is that having people who have done it, fallen in love with it, committed their selves and their lives to it, that are mentoring, right? It's sometimes, we look at this as it's also one of our perhaps responsibilities, or, one of our joys is to make sure that the next generations have a place to be able to do this, because somebody did that for us.
Right.
And that's a big thing to step into. Mentorship has changed in the last couple of generations, but we need to continue to embrace it, right? As we get older and we step into those roles, how do we embrace that? I want to be better at that. I think it was interesting, Stacy, you left off talking about New York, so I'm going to come back around
Oh,
to something with that. I left many years ago here in Nevada. I wanted to be an actor. It was difficult. Most people I knew said you should be a nurse. And I'm so glad, especially going through COVID, right, that no one had to have me as a nurse. I mean, I could certainly tell the story, but oh my goodness, I mean, I think we would have been in a lot more trouble. But I'll play one. I'll play a nurse, and I'll play it well. But it was actually my ex-husband who said, when I was really trying to hit San Francisco, LA, New York, and really struggling, not much money, but a lot of passion, a lot of chutzpah. But I had kids here too. I mean, it was a pivotal time, a lot of stuff. I was really pretty young. And he said, why don't you come back to Nevada and be a pioneer? Stop waiting in line for other people to say, to approve of you. Take all of the creativity and do it here and create opportunity for other people, basically. And so I did, and I like you, Keely, started a company, and I worked with Stacy. Stacy and I go so far back, so blessed. Um, and part of that was a young person being like, yes, I can. And with the determination of youth, we don't see some of the things that might be stopping points for us right later in life, thank goodness. um, and from that, I think learned so much and made a lot of mistakes, and how much we learn from mistakes, and I think that's so important. I just saw something that was talking about um, how important it is to teach children that it's okay to make a mistake, and here's how we learn from it. Here's how we learn from that mistake. Improv does that for
I,
us.
oh, I love this idea of, the definition of rehearsal being rehearing something, and rehearsal being the place where you uh, are supposed to make huge, big mistakes that then something can come of that. I don't know where I left off, but I guess that thing of, going to New York, whatever. But if you create where you're planted, then you're um, giving, when you're creating a world, or writing a play that takes place close to where you are planted, it creates a kind of a communal knowing from the audience that is there. I mean, that's certainly true for Queen of Sunshine Mountain, which takes place in Virginia City. We don't have a worldwide vocabulary of knowledge quite so much that is a shared knowledge or a shared culture. We are a fragmented society and culture right now, and I think theater is one way we bring folks back together. If we tell stories, site-specific stories that matter to a community, we begin to kind of weave together a world of knowing for a group of folks that all live in one place.
That's awesome, Stacey, because you bridged right into what that question is what do you see for the future of Theater for Youth? And, specifically Theater for Youth, but we can speak to theater. We have gone through a pandemic. We're hopefully coming out the other side, even though, every day on the news, we hear about other countries are having resurgences, and life is precious. We've had
Right.
some time to ourselves. And also, personally, I've gotten to think about why I do this, if I should still do this. Do I still have enough energy to give, enough ideas, enough mentorship, right? All of these things. We've had this huge pause that many, many generations have never had. So, what do you guys jesting on? What's the future of Theater for Youth and theater? Keely. We'll start talking again. Maybe it'll
Oh,
take.
can you hear me?
There we go. Yep.
Okay. I think that we're going to start using theater, especially in the youth um, category, as a way to cope now, especially after this pandemic. I feel the show that I'm doing this summer reflects on the pandemic because I have not been able to find words to help me, I guess, talk through what's been going on or express the way I've been feeling throughout. The best way that I can cope with this pandemic is through movement and through dance. And I think that a lot of people are going to find ways to cope with not just the pandemic, but so many other things happening in their lives through live performance or poetry or visual art. I think that we're really going to start hitting that, I guess, how to cope with theater.
Yeah. And being back together for the first time, right?
Mhm.
Exciting,
So
but then
exciting.
overwhelming. Like, I ride the line of loving people so much and wanting to bring it. And at the same time, I get nervous around people that I have to be real with, love being in front of people. And, there's some
Yeah.
lines that has
We
been
have to
brought
like
up,
rebuild this connection that we have with other people.
right? And the one-on-one, love
Mhm.
that. Jesse.
Well, there's a lot going on in the world that has affected the venues physically are, boarded up and closed. And so the future to me is addressing the very real things that, people are going through a lot of depression. People are going through a lot of issues with stress from economic fallout, the very real stress of, are my kids going to school today? Are they not going to school today? And theater, dance, poetry, storytelling in general, I choose to focus on poetry myself as an artist, as a spoken word artist. That's what can bring about healing from the woundedness that people have gone through. It can bring about a reason to gather so that people can experience what it is to hug one another again, and to embrace each other, not just in hugs, but with kind words, and to give that feedback in person. Because I've been doing collective breath for almost exactly a year straight worth of Sundays now. I've talked to a lot of people that they're not even really interested in poetry. They've just told me in the Zoom meetings and the group portion after I do my individual portion, thank you for doing this. It gives me something to look forward to. It gives me a reason to get out of bed. I've had more than one person say. It's helped me not be so sad. It helps me think about things from a different perspective. So theater can do all of those things and more. The future of it is bridging generational gaps, healing woundedness, making people maybe take that step back. Trigger alert for anyone who has dealt with or been affected by suicide, but the arts can literally bring people back from the edge of that chasm in their lives that they're standing on the edge of, facing the void, not knowing what to do. It can re-imbue them with a sense of passion and inspiration and creativity and purpose and togetherness, and feeling a part of them being not alone in this world. I know that those are all broad terms that I'm throwing out, but theater, the future of theater is saving us from ourselves. It's saving lives, is the future of theater.
It's beautiful.
I do believe that we put ourselves back together when we come together in a space physically with each other. And this pandemic has helped us figure out that a space can be 4 squares on a screen, that we can be together in this way. But I am looking forward to that original definition of theater, which is actors presenting live to folks in an audience that are there responding in the moment synchronously. That's going to be a wonderful day when that begins to happen for all of us.
Right.
Children's theater and theater for youth has to reflect that the world that they live in. And in some ways, fantasy and fairy tale and wonderful flights of fancy are an incredible gift to give to kids, to let them go away from the world that they live in. But also, theater can also be a place where they can explore what is really real and honest and happening in their lives as well. So we have to hold this definition of art, which, art can reflect the beauty of the natural world, and art can also comment on society and culture. They're not mutually exclusive things. And so in theater, we can do the same thing. We can allow kids to have an incredible storytelling, fun, fanciful journey, or we can deal with the real history. I keep thinking about Queen of Sunshine Mountain. We could deal with the real history of how people of Chinese descent were treated in Virginia City during our gold and silver rush.
Right.
Which wasn't great. right?
And
So
Right.
I think too, one of the big takeaways for us, Ruka, but I think for all of us in the Reno community that have been speaking to this is being able to create a channel for more diversity and understand how to do that without forcing the peg in the hole. But understanding, we have had, 90% at Bruca white American actors hit our stage, over 28 years. And luckily, we've had some wonderful people come through, so many wonderful people come through, um, some diversity, but, with Reno Little Theater and Good Luck Macbeth this year, we've really tried to come together to understand that and continue diversity training in terms of trying to understand it. We're all different, but we're all trying to get there. And it's been a struggle for us just in terms of, I don't want to categorize people and I want to create opportunity. And then one of the things that we learn also is how do we help other people? How do we open the door so people can also feel safe and confident to come in and create their own opportunity, right? Without
Mhm.
me as a white woman saying, here's your blessing. You can put this show up, but here are rules, so there's a lot of stuff that we've started to shake up in the ball over these last 16 months that has been going on for hundreds of years. But I hope we keep shaking the ball. And I hope that we keep figuring this out. Because when we talk about theater for youth, it's really interesting. For the most part, we take 4 actors into a school or a community. And for the most part, over the years, it's been 4 white actors. And when we go into the schools, then that's where we get to see the diversity, right? Our audiences at Bruca are so many wonderful supporters and patrons that have continued with us over the years, but broadening that audience is really important. But when we go into the schools, there we see the diversity. There is where we get to see that. And I think theater for youth, and for us, and a lot of the things that I've been thinking of is there's a good spot for that representation to really start to create this next generation that then will then feed into the theater and is going to make this theater community their own. This is our next generation. It goes back to I've seen interviews with a lot of Black writers who talk about what they've just had children and they go to find children's books for their kids so that their kids can have people to look up to and see their stories, and there aren't any stories about Black children. And where are those stories? And so I hope and want to work towards helping to create that diversity, especially in our community, because we can have impact there. But I also believe, going back to something that Stacy spoke on, if we can find our community and work in our community, it doesn't mean that we can't go and work other places. I've found a lot of opportunities by being able to create in our community and create stability and all sorts of different things that then have created invitations for me to be able to go to other places and
Mhm.
enjoy this art, right? So our final, because we're getting to the end, I just feel like we could talk for 4 or 5 days about this subject. It's so important, and I think also the thrust of courage, commitment, confidence, all of those things are things that Theater for Youth bring, and you, beautiful people, help to bring to our community. Let's talk about where people can go, where youth can go to be able to continue on this journey. And then at the end of this interview, I'll also go ahead and put some links on there so that people can check those out. But let's start with you, Stacy. You're teaching over at TMCC and doing a lot. What are some thoughts for people to continue or start on their path of artistry?
So, if a young college student is interested in doing theater, I would say do everything. I would say don't get isolated into a silo of I only do shows at TMCC or I only if you're in a training program that is keeping you busy 80 hours a week, sure, that makes sense if you're in an MFA program or something, right? But if you're here in this community, try to, you know, be involved in as broad a range of companies as you can. That's going to help with networking, Keely, right? That's going to show you a lot of different folks and their specific gifts, who, if they're willing to share that with you, get directed by as many different directors as you can, right? And be involved in as many different areas of theater as you can. So, you know, act on stage, work backstage, work in tech, do all of the things until you find that thing which, you know, Marie Kondo sparks joy, right, in you, the thing that you must continue to do. And then practice the art of doing the thing that you are excited about doing. Do it as much as you possibly can. And I'm always going to say that higher education is important. I know that, you know, growing up in an incredibly, you know, disadvantaged childhood that I had, I somehow figured out early on that education was the key for me. And so higher education is important. It's important for folks who want a liberal arts education and want to be able to know what the broad picture is for society and culture. But there are some folks who want to go out there and do the thing. And so if that is you and you want to practice this idea of having a theater career, then you know, you can always go back to college, and it is not an either or supposition. You can do both. And I know when I think about dancers, I know sometimes we think their careers are so time limited because we have this idea that you are done dancing at a specific time when your body is maybe cannot do specific things anymore. But you all only have to think about folks who have had very long careers to know that that you don't have to stop doing the thing. So I guess for young people, I would say, don't be afraid to create your own work. Don't be afraid to find untraditional ways of presenting, new site-specific ways of creating work. I remember a little video project that Mary Bennett and a friend of hers did 20 years ago that, gosh, I wish we had the vault footage of that, because there was some pretty incredible things that happened over the top of the kitchen table. So create, just create and connect, create and connect. When our kids are so used to texting that they have anxiety about making a real phone call to someone else, we know that we need to help these young people learn how to connect with other people.
That's awesome. Keely.
There's a lot of opportunities in Reno, and I think that our youth who want to be involved need to go and take on all those opportunities. See what classes Art Town has going on. Arts for All Nevada has a ton of classes happening over breaks during the summer, winter break. So does Reno Little Theater. So do most of the theaters in Reno. Go take class at Empire or the Conservatory of Movement or Fascinating Rhythms or Unlimited Dance. Go take some improv classes. Go find a clowning class. Go take class, and I would say don't just stick to one thing. You want to really broaden yourself, because if you go to an audition and you're really great at tap dancing, that's awesome. But the person next to you might be great at tap dancing and tilt and acrobatics and all these other things. So go and train in all these different categories of the arts, not just to make you that much better, but because you're going to find connections between each of those things. I find myself as a dance artist always pulling from poetry and pulling from different acting techniques to apply that to my choreography. And you know, it's just so much fun to go take all these classes. But there's a ton of opportunities in Reno, and we're right next to San Francisco. Go to ODC and take some classes there too, or some improv classes or acting classes. Just, you know, take on all the opportunities you can.
I love it. Be a Renaissance person. Makes you
Yeah.
so versatile, right? Jesse.
Well, there's wherever you are in the world, wherever you are in the country, if you're interested in writing, if you're interested in storytelling, that's part of what got me interested in poetry so early on in life was its accessibility. All I needed to be able to afford was a pen and a journal. That's all I needed. I didn't have to have a group of other people that wanted to do the same thing. I could go off into the countryside with my dog and my journal and my pen, and I could just create the world that was better than the one that I found in the real world. However, whatever age you are in school, if you're interested in creative writing, if you're interested in theater, if you're interested in poetry specifically, I would ask your English teachers, because whatever grade you're in, you've got an English teacher. I would ask them if there is a chance to have a poetry club on your school's campus. If there's not a chance to have a poetry club, then I would encourage you to check out the organizations Poetry Out Loud and Brave New Voices. I had the wonderfully soul enriching experience to the two ladies that I interview on my segment. I got to see them going from never really having left the state of Nevada in their lives to going to a national poetry competition, not once, but twice, and to be the first people from the city of Reno or Sparks to ever represent this area at that national competition, Brave New Voices. So if you're really interested in it, get involved with Poetry Out Loud. Get involved with the Brave New Voices organization, the place where we do our Spoken Views Collective, which has its youngest member has been 12 years old, ranging all the way up to, I think our oldest member was 78 years old. So that covers the gamut of quite a few people in this world. I would encourage you to check out the Holland Project, where it is an all ages youth safe space. And that is where we do our events. I would encourage you to listen to K-Wink Radio 97.7 FM. That is a community run radio station. I would encourage you to look into Black Rock Press, which is a publishing house that's affiliated with the University of Nevada, Reno. I would encourage you to look into any kind of open mic opportunity. I would encourage you on Facebook to follow, as I do, literary magazines, publishing houses, follow their Facebook pages, because they oftentimes put out contests specifically for youth creative writing where you can get published and where you can earn prize money. Some of them pay up to $2,000 if your poem is chosen. So there are ways to make money if you're willing to put in the work. And if you act on that passion, there are plenty of opportunities in the playground that is Reno, Nevada.
Absolutely. And I'll just
I love you, Jesse.
add to that, right?
I love you too.
What a bunch of inspiration happening right now. You know, never has there been a time that we've had more opportunity to also engage and watch classes online. You know, we've had opportunity as Nevada Arts Council artists to create a couple of lessons that are on the Nevada Arts or going up on the Nevada Arts Council site. But, you know, the saying, you can YouTube anything is true, so be careful. But also there's some great artists out there that have decided that they're going to share their lesson, from collaging to how to do a monologue, you know, all these things. But you're going to find what you like. And if it's not speaking to you and you don't like it, move on. Like my mother, great reader, she'd be like, I knew, you know, 4 pages into the book if I was going to, you know, keep going. Kind of same thing with your artistry, right? You can feel it, you know what's speaking to you, and what, like if you put something down or you stop something and you're like, yes, it keeps going, right? You're sparked, you got that. Love the local scene, I think, is just now it's going to really start to burst. A lot of people think, 1918 flu, then we had the 1920s, and it was the roaring 20s for a lot of reasons, both in innovation and also in the proclamation of self. People became independent and all sorts of fun things. So I think we'll see a big resurgence of opportunity, of being able to embrace perhaps yourself and your authenticity and support that in others. How important is that? We can't just close that off and be like, what about me? What about me? It's also, I love what you're doing, Jesse. I love what you're doing, Stacy. I love what you're doing, Keely. How can we help each other move these things forward, right? Need that. At Bruca, every summer, we do a kids intensive, kids workshop, youth workshop. This year, we're going to ride the line. We're going to have 14 kids in Bruca, but then we're going to do a downtown midsummer walking tour pop-up performances. So we'll teach them how to do a walking tour. We'll take Shakespeare and have them adapt and make it their own in front of the Believe sign, the circle over by the coffee shops and Wingfield. And they'll get to voice this outside tour. So we'll kind of still be keeping it safe. So lots of different opportunities. But if, when in doubt, create your own backyard play or your own, you can make your own podcast in your closet. These are things that you just need a phone for. If that's a struggle, you're probably not watching this, but there are ways. We are in the age of information and innovation. So the tools are in our hands, and it's up to us to move them forward and have the confidence and courage to speak our truths and support the others in doing that, which is so important. You guys are so inspiring. Thank you for sharing your stories with our audience. And I hope that you'll also continue to share this in however you would like to do that. I look forward to many more years of creating with all of you in these windows, and appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for holding space.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to do this.
Right.
Yeah. All right, now it's time to play. Okay. All right. So we hope you'll watch each one of these pieces with our Theater Festival for Youth. And then we hope next year, as part of our Biggest Little Festival, that we also have our youth pieces that are part of that festival. And we encourage people to create and enjoy. So thank you all very much. Namaste.